like that. Then we'll go into just a little bit, real briefly, on record keeping. Of course, you all as private applicators, if you do use a restricted use product, you are required to keep and maintain those records on those applications. Talk just a little bit about an incident reporting. If you have an accident or a spill incident or something like that, go over pesticide product registration just a little bit, and then we'll sort of wrap up and talk a couple things about some federal and state updates with Dicamba and hemp, with products that are labeled for hemp and things like that. If you look at this map right here, basically put this up there just to show you how we are broken down region-wise with the Office of Pesticide Services. Of course, you can see the territory that I have out there in the green. You can see how the rest of the state is broken down right there. We did add 3, or not necessarily added, but we did include 3 new investigators to our office this year. In the Farmville territory, we've got Mike Abston. We've got Dylan Payne in the Metro Richmond, and then in the Fairfax territory, we have Gonzalo Ortiz. So basically, as far as the investigator side of the house, we're fully staffed right now with that. Did get word just the other day that our Roanoke investigator, Charlie McGold, is probably going to retire here in the near future. So we'll probably be looking to replace him, or I hope that we'll be able to replace him pretty soon when he steps out. This slide here basically is just, it's basically if you go to our VDAX website and you're trying to find the correct person to contact, this has all of their contact information here as far as phone numbers and email addresses, as well as the folks in Richmond underneath the certification licensing, registration and training sections right there. So if anytime you ever have a question, you want to try to find something with our agency, all you got to pretty much do is just go in your Google box there and type in VDAX pesticides, and it's probably going to pretty much take you to these screens here that you can navigate through pretty easily. Trying to move the chat box up here. It's got everybody's picture right here in part in the front of my screen. Basically, when we look at our office and the Office of Pesticide Services, what gives us our authority is pretty much twofold. It's when we look on the federal side of things with EPA, it's that Fungicide and Rodenticide Act right there. And pretty much, you know, the main gist of why we exist is to protect consumers and the environment for pesticides that are being used out there is pretty much what we go for, and what gives us what we do on a day-to-day basis. And on the state side of things, it is the Virginia Pesticide Control Act. It pretty much gives all the regulations pursuant to product registration, licensing of pesticide businesses, pesticide applicator certification, whether that be private applicators like you all are, or commercial applicators with licensed commercial businesses, and the container containment there. Most of our workload is going to be pretty much routine inspections. These inspections, we primarily sort of focus them towards our licensed pesticide businesses. These you know, they have a lot more liability when it comes to pesticide application. They're doing it as a for-hire out there. You know, they're a little bit more stringent as far as their certification and the rules that they have to follow with that. So most of our workload does focus on the inspection of these licensed businesses, doing site visits with them, making what we call use observations when they're actually out here making a application. A lot of times we will accompany them to make sure that they are following that label, they do have the right PPE on, and things like that. Of course, we do handle complaints, and with complaints can come violations. When we look at the enforcement actions with the violations, a good number of these enforcement actions will just end up being a letter of caution. If it's a first time offense, or if it's something not very serious, a lot of times they will just end up being like a letter of caution. But we can issue civil penalties. They can be up to $100,000. Don't know of any that's ever made it to that scale since I've been in my position, but it is possible out there. And then especially for the commercial guys, one of the biggest things that can affect them the most is if we suspend or revoke their pesticide business license. Of course, that's, they have to have that in order to operate legally in the state. So that's going to hit them the hardest. But that don't happen on a very frequent case. When we look at our top 5 violations, this ended at June 30th of this past year. This top 5 list pretty much remains the same year in, year out. Sometimes the order of these things will change, but the sale of unregistered products was number 1. All pesticide products have to be registered, not only with EPA, but they also have to be registered through our agency to be sold in the marketplace in Virginia. We do basically registration checks at any marketplace that sells pesticides, whether that be a Dollar General, a farm co-op, Lowe's, Walmart. We check all these marketplaces for these licensed products out there. And a lot of times we'll find some products that are not registered. Number 2 and number 3, not certified, no business license. These two pretty much go hand in hand. As investigators, when we're out in our territories and we see folks making pesticide applications, especially if we can tell if it's of the commercial nature, they're doing it for hire. Maybe we haven't run across them. It looks like a new company logo on a service truck or something. A lot of times we'll stop these folks and to check their business license and certification. And especially with the territory that I have, being that we border so many states, I see a lot of times we'll see folks that will come from other states into Virginia and work. And they can do that, but they're also required to have a business license and certification in Virginia. Sometimes these folks will think that as long as they have it in their home state, they're legal to do that in Virginia as well. But they have to do just like anybody else that lives in the state. They have to have a business license certification here. So we'll find that sometimes. Number 4, misuse. That's pretty much going to result from the complaints that we get, and more than likely, the misuse is going to become off of an off-label type of application. For me, got a lot of ag territory. A lot of the complaints center around maybe an ag complaint that maybe a neighbor has sprayed next to another neighbor. The one neighbor feels like that they've got property damage on their property from the neighbor spraying, and of course they'll call us and we'll go out and check. And sometimes we'll do residue samples. We'll collect vegetation, photos, things like that. But that's pretty much any of the misuse is going to come from those complaints. And then record keeping, number 5. All commercial businesses are required to keep records on all of their applications, whether it's a general use pesticide or a restricted use. We generally don't see too much issue really of the commercial folks not keeping records, but sometimes they get lax in their record keeping methods. They'll leave some things out, and we can cite them on that. But the actions for all of these different violations, we issued 49 civil penalties last year, 39 stop sale of these unregistered products, 4 letters of caution, and then didn't do any advisory letters this year, but we can do that as well. And these basically are just the statutes pursuant to the Virginia Pesticide Control Act. I'll pretty much just show the actual regulation when it comes to pesticide product registration, licensing of pesticide businesses, applicator certification. Stuff is available. It is online. You can look it up if anytime you want to look a little bit more closely at that. And if you would ever have a complaint against you for a application that you've made, Just because you get a complaint against you, that's not the end all by no means. It goes through several sets of eyes, several sets of reviews in Richmond. Basically, if I have to come out, I'm just the fact finder. I go out, get all the facts, and then submit that to Richmond. My supervisor will look at it first, and then he'll pass it on to our case manager they'll actually look at them and make the determination whether there actually is a violation or not. But even before that point in time, there's a couple different avenues that a respondent or someone that has got the complaint against them can take. They can request an informal fact hearing as well as a formal hearing, just to basically give their side of the story if they feel like that's going to help their case. So there's a lot of different stopgaps in there before there's actually any violation cited if there's question with that. Like Phil's mentioned, and I mentioned earlier there, always review this label every year. Every time you use a product, even though you may be using a product year in, year out, they can make label language changes on these products that you may not be aware of. And one example, we'll get to it here in the next slide, but when we're talking about label as well, when we talk about pesticide use, it's not just the application of pesticides, but it's also any of the other routine activities such as mixing, loading, applying, storage, disposal. All of these by the Virginia Reg is considered a pesticide use. And pretty much what derives the label language, and probably most of you have noticed that labels tend to get longer and longer as they add more and more information to them. But it's pretty much everything in that label centers around trying to mitigate the risk to either the human health of folks in and around an application, as well as the environmental health. And Phil had mentioned that with that one insecticide products with the acute toxicity to aquatic organisms, that plays a very large role in these labels and trying to mitigate those risks to those two groups right there. And here's what I was meaning to get to every year. Just for instance, and some of you may have used this product right here, this Gramoxone SL 3.0. There is several different formulations of Gramoxone. This particular one is a restricted use pesticide, meaning that you have to have your private applicator certification to use it. And what changed with this one this year, it was restricted use before, but what really changed in the label is now you have to be a private applicator or a full commercial applicator in order to apply this product. Beforehand, you as a private applicator could be in direct supervision of someone maybe on your farm when they applied this product, but it's no longer that case. You have to be certified as either a commercial applicator or a private to actually apply this product. And that's one of the labels that just changed this year, and one example of reviewing those labels there. Real briefly on storage, these are a couple photos that were taken of a place down in Carroll County, actually this past year, where we had our disposal program. This was an old orchard that hadn't been in business for several years, but the folks contacted us, desired to have it cleaned out, which was, you can tell by looking at it right there, and the structure, that it was a pretty good idea to go ahead and get these things out of the environment before they did any more harm than maybe what they already had. But when you think back to how you store your own pesticides, I hope that you've got them in a secure area. You've got them an area away from where folks can maybe have access to them. Of course, this time of year, probably need to get them in an area that they're not going to freeze. Certainly, try to have them up off the ground or something. You have something to contain it and collect it up there. So, just sort of keep those things in mind. Most folks don't have a lot of a lot of pesticides on hand, which is a good thing probably throughout the year. But what ones you do, try to put a little thought in how you store those and keep them safe and secure. This is just a few photos of the disposal program that we had this past year. This program rotates across the state. It's basically on a 5-year cycle. We had it in our area actually last year. It will be back 2024 for our end of the state. But this past year, they collected a little over 26,000 pounds of products, similar to those photos I just showed you there a minute ago. And we've collected a little over 1.5 million pounds since this program has been going on in the state. This is basically just a map of the state, and as you can see there, like I said, we will be back 2024. This program is designed for anybody, whether it be farm folks, homeowners, commercial businesses that maybe just have any type of pesticide that would like to dispose of it. It's a no fee, no charge, no questions asked. You just bring it to a identified site there, and our agency has a contractor that basically goes around and collects that. The container recycling program works similar to the pesticide disposal. It rotates around the state every year, and primarily the folks that take advantage of this program are your commercial ag folks that have a lot of 2.5 gallon jugs of empty products that they've triple rinsed and have stored them properly before the contractor can get there. That basically then they will just chip those up on site and recycle them. They collected almost 130,000 pounds this past year, and a little bit over 2.2 million pounds since this program has been going probably for the last 15 or 20 years. And it's actually ongoing right now. Like I said, it rotates around the state every year to more or less the commercial ag folks. Real briefly on your certification, of course, you know this or you wouldn't be online tonight, but it is your responsibility to maintain your private applicator certification. Of course, you need to attend one of these continuing ed type of meetings at least every other year or every 2 years. Your license expires December 31st, but there is a 60-day grace period with that actually you can still maintain your license without having to retest as long as you attend one of these classes before March 1st of the next calendar year there. Just sort of always keep that in mind. And in fact, we have a few classes that are scheduled after the first of the year, hoping maybe that this situation that we're in may be a little bit improved by that point in time, but just sort of keep those things in mind. And if you do attend them, when things get back to normal and you attend classes back-to-back years, you can get up to 4 years credit with that, but that's the maximum you can get. As far as accidents and incidents, our regs are not real specific on what actually requires you to contact our office, but pretty much they do say that if you have any type of accident, if you feel like it has a pretty high potential to harm human health or to harm the environment, get in a water source, of something of that nature, you're expected to let our office know within 48 hours. And generally that's just either a phone call to me or to Rich or whatever, just sort of give us a little bit of backdrop of what's going on. And then you have to follow that up within 10 days with a written report. But like I said, it's not specific on the amount of pounds or gallons or anything like that. It's just, it all hinges on whether you feel like that it's something you can clean up and it's not going to harm anyone else or the environment. We don't need to know those kind of things, but if it has that potential to do that, that's the ones that you need to let us know about. Of course, we've mentioned this several times about all pesticides, whether they're either general use or restricted use, they all have to be registered with EPA. This is a very lengthy process. a very costly process that, you know, they have to go through a lot of different scrutiny, through a lot of different university trials and things like of that nature before they can actually come to the marketplace. But it covers all general use and restricted use products. Put this in here as far as e-commerce, especially in the situation we're in now. There's a lot of more online purchases of pretty much any and everything, and pesticides included. Just put this in here to just sort of remind you, if you do buy something online, just make sure that you are buying it from a reputable source. Make sure that you can determine that it does have an EPA registration number and it is registered through EPA, because there's a lot of foreign countries that sell products online that may or may not be registered through EPA and through our agency to be marketed in the state. So just, you know, do a little bit of a background check on some of these things if you do plan on buying some of these products. This really pertains more to our commercial folks, but it's basically the fee structure that we have for far as pesticide products. All products, like we mentioned, have to be registered through our agency to be sold in the state. That's basically a $160 annual cost for each one of those products. And then the commercial folks, you know, they have to have a business license, and they also have to have their commercial services outlined there on the screen. Fortunately for you folks as private applicators, we don't charge anything for that. I know some of our neighboring states actually maybe charge $10, $15 or something for private applicators as well, but fortunately we're in a spot that we don't have to charge our private applicators. Now, looking a little bit more specifically to information that is a little bit more pertinent to just private applicators, especially talking about records. Like we've mentioned several times tonight, anytime you make an application with a restricted use product, you are legally required to keep an application record of that. I certainly recommend keeping application records of all your pesticide applications, whether that be just Roundup around the fence or whether that be atrazine in a cornfield. You know, probably when I look back at across the complaints that I have, not many of my complaints really come from a restricted use product application. It's more or less a lot of times just your a Roundup application, maybe along a fence row between a property border, or a general use type of application made from say a right-of-way company making it underneath a utility power line or a roadside or something like that. So certainly recommend keeping records of all your applications. And when you look at this screen here, it's basically on the right-hand side is the actual 9 elements that are required for a pesticide application. This has not changed. Pretty much has been the same since we've had this requirement in place. And then when you look over on the left, it's actually the records that are required for somebody that has to comply with the worker protection standard. And basically the worker protection standard applies mostly to folks that have agricultural workers, whether they be seasonal or migrant, that are on their operations, you know, they're required to have information available to those workers. So if they ever have any questions about maybe what is being applied or some of the areas that they're working in, so they can get some information on the products that are used. And the one main difference there is just the addition of the safety data sheets that are required for the worker protection standards there. And of course, this center, and I don't know if Phil's got some of these record books. If he don't, we can certainly get you some. You know, that's just an example of one of the record books that we can provide for you course, it's like I tell folks, we're not really that particular on the method of record you keep, just as long as you keep a record that covers all these 9 elements out here. On the Federal Worker Protection Standard, most of you folks, I'm probably pretty sure, is going to be primarily farm family based labor force. So you're not totally exempt from worker protection, but you're exempt from a lot of the restrictions with this worker protection. The couple things that still do apply to you all is the fact that you need to still follow the label, meaning that you need to provide the proper personal protective equipment to patients, or maybe in a area where applications have been made, as well as you're required to let these family members know maybe where you have made an application. Maybe you've sprayed a hay field. That's a typical place where you have family members going through or accessing on a daily basis. You're required to let them know that you've made an application there, and it may have a restricted entry interval of 4 hours, 8 hours, or whatever it may be. You got to let those folks know that, as well as anybody else that may be on your property. You may have a commercial applicator come on your property as well, and you need to let them know these same things. This application exclusion zone, this is another tenet of the worker protection standard that basically received some changes this past year. And basically what this is referring to is if you think of a spray rig maybe going in a field somewhere, this is basically like a buffer that's surrounding this spray rig. On all sides, that you want to make sure that there is no one in that area that could be contacted by this pesticide application. And when they made these changes a couple of years ago with the worker protection and they brought up this whole term of application exclusion zone, there's a lot of folks that had a lot of comments in relation to this, especially when it was concerned to maybe worker or immediate family housing that may be impacted by this application exclusion zone. So basically what they went in there and did was change some of the wording to clarify some of that language with that. And these actually take effect December 29th with that. Real quickly on the Applicators Protecting Pollinators, we've been pushing this, a couple of different programs for the last 2 or 3 years throughout the state, and really the whole Mid-Atlantic region has. Is trying to do what we can to protect our pollinators out there, especially in regards to pesticides that may impact them that are being applied in their area, and to help facilitate some of this, what we call communication between beekeepers and commercial or ag producers or anybody else that's making a pesticide application where these pollinators may be present. Basically, we have a couple database programs, and one is called BeeCheck, and it's pretty much nationwide, I think now, but it's a database that beekeepers can basically go on there and register their hives to show the location of their hives. And then the other one is called FieldCheck, and it's a database where basically private applicators or any other ag producers can go on there and register their locations of their fields and maybe what they plan to do as far as pesticide applications to those fields. And then in theory, each one of these groups can basically go online. You as an ag producer could go, say, if you've rented a new field somewhere at a new location that you don't have any idea about the neighbors, or you may not, or beekeepers, you could go on this database and you could pull up your address, and then you could look and search to see if there may be some bees that could possibly be affected. But the bottom line is just trying to increase this communication between ag producers and beekeepers out there. A lot of times if a beekeeper knows that maybe a neighbor's going to be making an application, they may decide to move their hives. They may decide to cover them and things like that. So, we're just trying to increase this communication and make each group aware of the other one right there to facilitate a little bit of dialogue between them to try to lessen this impact. I don't know if anybody in this group grows hemp, but the challenge to the producers in Virginia or really nationwide that have grown hemp the last couple of years is there has not been very many pesticides that have been labeled for hemp. Meaning basically then when you talk about weed control, insect control, and things like that, they've had to rely pretty much on mechanical methods, going out here and doing things by hand, just because there is not products that are labeled for use on hemp. There is research going on trying to get some products, some herbicides and insecticides that'll be able to be used on hemp, but they have to go through this, this rigorous step of the research and things like that to make sure that they're going to be safe on these crops. And also to make sure that some of the label language actually includes hemp as a use site or a potential use site for these products. So that is still ongoing as we speak, but there's still very limited pesticides that can be used on hemp right now. And then as far as actually, if you are interested in growing hemp, basically our agency is the one that does provide the certification in order for you to do that or registration. And this Erin Williams, she's the program manager for the hemp program in the state. There for a little while, USDA was the main one regulating it, and then it switched over to VDAX. And then there was sort of a combination of both for a little while, but after this September 30th, it basically reverted back to our agency as far as obtaining your registration in order to grow hemp there. We mentioned that Dicamba earlier, and Phil wanted to make sure we was going to cover a little bit on this. Basically, Dicamba, and some of you may be familiar with, just like we just saw one of the labels there that have this product. It's been a product that we're used to as far as some brush control and things like that. But the real issue has come in, especially when you look at the regions of the nation that have a lot more soybeans grown or cotton grown. They have made some GMO seeds, basically, of soybean and cotton that have allowed over-the-top applications of Dicamba and 2,4-D, much like Roundup-ready corn, that can control some of these troublesome weeds, and has been a real effective tool for these growers, especially in the Midwest where they have so much acreage of these products, or in the South with cotton. But the issue with Dicamba has come in the fact that it's a lot more volatile than, say, glyphosate is. And what has happened is this technology took a little while to, for some growers to actually adapt to and get these GMO seeds. You may have one grower that has got the proper crop that he can go over with Dicamba, but you may have a grower right across the road that does not. And with the issue of volatilization and moving off target, nationwide there has been several thousands or millions of acres of crop that have been damaged with Dicamba, as well as some 2,4-D. And what basically happened is there was so much damage that folks went to EPA and requested them to really take a harder look at these products and to really try to justify if they still needed to be in the marketplace or not. And back this past year, for a little while, they actually pulled the registration on all of the products that had this use with them. But fortunately, here at the end of October, EPA did re-register 2 of these Dicamba products for a 5-year registration period. But to help control some of that damage that they had saw, they implemented some additional control measures. You can see those are listed right there. They added a addition of a little bit larger buffer right there. They limited the time frame of when you can make certain applications, and they also limited maybe the total amount of product or applications that could be made in a growing season. Also, like that we mentioned a little bit ago about the Gramoxone 3.0 SL, these Dicamba products, they have to be only applied by certified applicators as well, meaning either private applicators like you all are, or full commercial Category 1A applicators can make these applications. Not even registered technicians that may work for a commercial applicator business, they cannot make the application. They have to be fully Cat 1A certified. And they also required additional training, sort of similar to the training you're going through here with this, but these are a little bit more specific on these products themselves. And this training is all based pretty much online, and I think it's, depending on which product, it's good for either 2 to 3 years, but it's an additional training that you have to have certification in order to, before you can even buy these products. PARAQUAT, much the same way. EPA has really been looking at it very hard, probably for the last 5 to 10 years. It's sort of in that 15-year review cycle. And unfortunately, PARAQUAT is another one of those products that is very toxic and in very small amounts. And there's still issues nationwide of this product being stored in maybe a food type, a beverage type container, and being, ingested by someone that did not know what was in that container right there. So they really cracked down on the labels of these products with PARAQUAT as the active ingredient to try to crack down on some of this unwanted poisonings that have happened with that. And just like the Dicamba, it's the same way. You have to be a certified applicator in order to actually apply these products. And they also have a separate required PARAQUAT training that's available online that you have to have certification through with as well. And this one here listed says this training is actually good for 3 years from when you take the training with that. And some of the other proposed changes that they have made with PARAQUAT, they've limited some of the aerial types of applications with it. Once again, they have restricted some of the reentry interval times, made it a little bit more stringent on that right there. Says it's prohibited backpack applications. I'm not aware of anyone that actually applies this with a backpack, but I guess in some areas there may be with that. So they've also proposed new safety measures with that. And it's actually still in the review process. The comment period with EPA closes on December 22nd, which is just right around the corner. But for folks that want to have any kind of input to EPA with this product, you've actually got an avenue to give your comment to EPA right there with that. And that's the way they do most of these products when they're actually in review. And if you ever have any, you're wanting to really look up of some of the regulations that EPA has, maybe specifically on products, their website is going to give you the most up-to-date information with that. Pretty easy to search, navigate their website and find that. And with that, that's basically all I have. This is just sort of a slide with our contact information for the folks in Richmond. Of course, you can always get a hold of me. If you can't get a hold of me, Phil knows how to get a hold of me pretty easy, but always feel free to contact me if you got any concerns or anything. But I appreciate your all's time tonight. Does anybody have any questions or comments?